D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Roll for initiative.
Hello, folks, and we are back from Gen Con. Jason and I, fresh back from Gen Con, weary-eyed, ready to go to sleep.
Just got back, have not slept. Just got back, have not slept.
Yeah. Can't tell you how many days we were walking around wandering like zombies in there, and I'm still going to get you back for jailing me, Jason. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, I can't believe I didn't actually get recording of the actual jailing.
And I can't believe you led me over to the booth. You're like, oh, there's something cool over here. And you're like, oh, come look at this.
I am so not sneaky.
What's this jailing thing?
Go ahead, Jason. Tell them about it.
Jail and bail. So, one of the cool things with Gen Con is they do a lot of stuff for charity. And one of their charity events is the ongoing jail and bail. You can have anybody arrested and put in jail for 5 minutes.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's fun. But what was it like? I wasn't there to see you get jailed.
It was actually pretty cool. It was me and some other dude in jail. We were singing. The jailer guy made us sing. So we started singing New York, New York, and then something else. And then two chicks came in the jail cell, and they were acting all flirty and, let's just say it goes beyond the rating of this podcast how they acted.
It's funny. A lot of people were shocked when they saw the photos. If they don't know the whole gaming scene, they're like, there's girls there. I was like, there's a lot of girls there. I mean, this gaming's for everybody.
It's changed since we got into it like 25, 30 years ago.
That's true. Yeah. But yeah, gaming knows no borders.
That's true.
Nerdity knows no borders.
I hope you got, there's some really nice-looking women there with some nice-looking costumes. I hope you got those pictures of them.
The one thing I never do at the conventions is take pictures of costumes.
Why?
I guess it's just because I know that everybody's taking photos of the costumes. So if anybody wants to know what kind of costumes were there, it's pretty easy to see the pictures. So I save my film, so to speak.
I hear what you're saying. So anyway,
was Chainmail Bikini Girl there?
Yes, she was.
Probably.
I saw her.
Cool.
I'm not going to go into some of the things I saw, which can never be unseen.
Yeah. Well, there was Anyway, Jason and I had a moment to track down and tackle Frank Mentzer, and we trapped him in a very hot, boiling room.
He's getting up in the years. We're tackling him for it. Jeez.
Well, we had to wrestle him.
I got to tell you, I think he could take us both. I don't know how old he is, but he certainly doesn't look it.
He's a feisty old guy. I mean, he's really cool. We had a chance to sit down with him, and we had a nice long 45-minute sweating our butt off interview with him.
Actually, even longer. But so we were going to be doing that during this show. This show, since it's our just coming back from Gen Con, will be after we have a chance to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we saw. We'll go ahead and run that interview, and that'll be what we do this week.
Yeah. A couple teasers for Frank. He does explain why the rule sets were rewritten by him, and also he talks a little bit about the Immortals box set and how that came around. So you'll definitely want to listen to this interview. It's really cool. We also sat in with, was it Chad from Dead Gamer Society?
Yes, yeah. So Chad from Dead Gamer Society sat in and helped us out. Hi, Chad.
Hi, Chad.
Not hi now.
Chad.
He's not here now.
No, he's
we'll have them on as special guests either next week or the week after, because I guess we have another special guest coming up. Julie, you want to tell us about her?
Right, yeah.
That's Julie Hoverson from the audio drama. She's the one that sent in the voicemail about the traps. So we're going to do a traps episode coming up this week. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk about that trap she did and Grimtooth's. So
yeah, and I was able to pick up a brand new copy of Grimtooth's traps.
Nice.
So I have it here, so I can sit and look through it while we. Did you guys know which trap she did?
I think Nick said he found it, actually.
Yeah, I believe it was in Traps 4.
Okay, well, I've got just Traps number 1 here, so I don't have hers. But, did you pick up any good loot, Vince?
Oh, I got so much stuff. I just kept spending and spending and spending. Like I said on the Facebook feed, if I had millions of dollars, I'd buy everything here.
Yeah, I came back with 3 bags full of stuff.
Yeah. I had my backpack.
3?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
What was that thing we saw? There was one thing we saw. I was telling Nick about it when we had a chance to sit down finally in person. Nick, was nice actually getting to sit and chat with you in person.
Yeah, how was your personal meetup?
He punched me in the face.
Well, he was very rude, and he tried to grab my... never mind.
He punched me in the mouth. No, it was really cool. We got to sit down and chat, just talk about Gen Con and, where the old school Renaissance is going. And so it was really cool. And now if we could just, all three of us, get together at the same time in the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh well. That's
So
gonna
what
be
kind
hard.
so what other kind of loot did you get?
I
What's
picked
some
up
of your best stuff?
probably some of the best things. I got a bunch of modules, even though I don't like modules, like you were saying to me. I'm surprised you're buying modules. You don't like modules.
But they're fun to get.
I know, it was just so tempting, and I got a couple box sets from the original Frank Mentzer box sets.
Wow. Oh, you got that black. You get the black box.
Yeah, I
didn't
got the Master, I got the Expert Rules, and the Companion.
Yeah, so that's worth it.
They were cheap, and they were in good condition, so I had to snatch those up.
Yeah, I saw those modules you bought, and I was like, my jaw just dropped. I'm like, wow, that's a pretty good price, considering that they're all out of print, and they're in really good shape.
I was shocked
Yeah.
at some of the prices I got on things. I mean, I paid $15 for the Grimtooth's traps, but then I picked up a lot of things like some issues of Dragon from the late 70s, early 80s that I was missing at about $2 each.
You were going nuts,
Wow.
dude, with those Dragon magazines.
Oh, yeah, everything. I'm really excited. I got a box, for the full set of the AD&D battle system.
Yes.
I did go back and buy Amoeba Wars because it's just too cool. This Avalon Hill game from the 70s, or actually no, from 1981, where it's an Avalon Hill space hex sort of galactic conquest game.
You know what I actually had the most fun, Jason, the whole time I was there, other than playing in the game that we played in, because that was super fun too.
Oh,
But-
good, thanks.
The Settlers of Catan, the Microsoft Surface version of that game, that was so much fun playing on that.
That
I
looked
put that
really
up on
slick.
You saw it on the Facebook feed?
Yeah, I'm like, wow. Pretty
But you know
impressive.
what's kind of fun? Okay, well, so first of all, over at the Geek Chic, or the Gamer, sorry, was it Geek Chic or Gamer Chic? The tables.
I
the
think it was
fancy-
Geek Chic.
Okay, well, those guys, they had set up one also, but what was cooler about theirs is their Surface table was an open source version instead of the Microsoft one.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Interesting.
That was kind of neat. But it was cool they had both of them there. But, honestly, after I watched the Surface thing for a while and I thought how awesome and cool it was, and after I kind of got used to the novelty, then I went over to where they were playing just regular Settlers. It was still kind of better. I mean, it's still... But it was cool that they had it.
Yeah, I played
the.
the Settlers of Catan, the Stone Age version, the Atlantis version. It was so many versions of that game, I couldn't believe it.
Stone Age version?
Yeah.
What was that? Get rocks for twigs and what have you?
Yeah, it was you collect hide, sticks, rocks, and meat and everything to do things.
I see you still didn't Vince. I see you didn't bring Nick a new headset.
Oh wow!
I hear the whooshing of the winds and the banging of the drums.
I didn't have.
I'm sorry.
I didn't have my headset on
messing with
me.
you.
Sorry, guys.
Some others. Well, I'll talk about some of the other stuff after the interview that's coming up.
Let's get right into
But,
the interview, and then we'll
I just
come
wanted
back
to
to
point out one thing that I was really two things I was really excited about buying because we're going to mention this in the interview a little bit. There was an auction,
Yes.
and anybody who's been listening to the little special dispatches will have heard this. Maybe we'll put them all together into one thing. But anyways, if people have been listening to the special dispatches, they've heard some of the auction, and it was of course a memorial fundraiser to put a statue up for Gary Gygax, which we'll hear about in the interview. But I got two things.
Very cool.
I got Gary's personal copy of his book, Gary Gygax's World Builder.
Cool.
Which, I fully intend to honor him by using this properly. And the other thing was from Castles and Crusades, his Castle Zagig.
Oh, you did want to get. Okay, cool.
I did.
You got a copy of the Upper Works one?
This is the. It's the Eastmark
Is it the
Gazetteer. It's the Eastmark Gazetteer for Castle Zagig from
Oh,
Control Board
cool.
Games, and it's
Very
signed by
cool.
Gary Gygax. So
Oh, nice.
that is
Yeah.
going to have a permanent special place in my home.
Yeah, I left the auction a little early because there was too many people and it was getting a little bit ripe in there. So I was like, Jason, I'm ditching. But
It was pretty packed.
Yeah, you did pick up. Didn't you pick up something else also from the auction?
Just those two.
You didn't get the Legendary Journeys or something?
I was bidding on it, and it got up to 120, and I let it go because it got a little rich for my blood.
Okay, I thought maybe you won that too.
No, almost. They got me down. They knocked me down.
Anyway, let's head into the interview, and then we'll come back and we'll chat a little bit more.
Feature.
All right, folks, we're sitting here at Gen Con, the Extraordinary of the Year, with Frank Mentzer. How you doing, Frank?
All right.
Good. Jason's sitting here with me as usual.
And we have Chad from Dead Game Society.
Hello.
Yeah, I've DM'd for him before.
Yeah, I have no voice, so.
Where did you guys play before?
Actually, I met Frank at GaryCon 2 just a few months ago in Lake Geneva.
Righteous Con, the Gygax. Of course, we go back to GaryCon 0, which was a get-together after Gary's funeral. A lot of great folks came, a lot of old TSR alumni, etc., and so we rolled some dice in Gary's honor the very night after we said goodbye. And the family had the idea, what if we do this every year in around the same time in March when Gary passed? So this has been building as more and more people have found out about it. And all the old TSR alumni come, people like stellar names in the industry and the very foundation of things like Mike Carr, artists like Steve Sullivan. Just everybody shows up for this, and it's like old home reunion. It's great, and it's old school gaming, new school gaming. There's a mixture of everything.
What were you running when you played?
I was just doing a little first edition thing. I thought it'd be fun for everybody to be a monk. And so they ran around out in the wilderness doing their first monk wilderness training with Master or whatever his name. Modeled after, of course, the old TV show, David Carradine and so forth.
Comfortable Legend.
So, right.
Yeah.
So we would. I did a little research. We didn't invoke the master and a lot of the same shtick and so forth.
Yeah, it was really great. We had, I believe, 2 monks of lawful good, 2 monks of
Sure,
lawful neutral.
because in first edition D&D, monks can be various alignments as long as they're lawful. Now, one of the reasons I'm talking about this in depth is not just to promote GaryCon, which is you're going to hear about in the near future. You can bet on. But it's a classic case where I try and do something that few people are doing these days, offering an adventure that you can complete in 2-3 hours, maybe 4 tops. So many adventures, especially at cons, are they just feel incomplete. You do the best you can. You can go do your briefing, and you try and hit the finale, and you always run out of time because there's so many great things to do at a place like this.
That's exactly what happened in our game, because I was running a first edition game by Expeditious Retreat, which is awesome. They make really good stuff.
Now, of course, Wizards in the 4th edition Encounters line is pushing into something like that, shorties, one-night completions. So they're aware of the need and the market for that. And personally, since we're getting a little ahead, but I hope to get my company started up within the next 2 years, bringing together some old friends like Jim Ward. Don't think fast forward, think Gamma World, Med Alpha, the foundation level stuff at the dawn of the hobby, working with Harold Johnson, co-author of one of the top tournament modules called Lost to Mohican that came out in the 70s, one of the super collectibles, etc., but a dynamite tournament adventure in its day.
Let's stick with that, because I want to hear more about, because I haven't heard about the company idea.
Well, we don't have, I talked a little about it a year ago here at Gen Con to a couple of people, but nothing public. Unfortunately, a lot of that was overheard. I have yet to really acclimate to the fact that some people treat me like, what's that broker, E.F. Hutton, and I start talking, all of a sudden everybody starts listening. It happens to me on the boards as well. When people ask for advice in games, I give them a suggestion only, and they say, okay, that's the rule for the campaign, it's cast in stone, and I say, please don't take me for granted. That's a Gygaxian. Yes, that's a Gygaxian pun.
I thought I caught that.
Gary and I did a lot of that, but I give advice, and the old hippie in me, since I'm a Woodstock vet, honestly, and the whole thing, power to the people and all. It's your game. Play it the way you want, not the way I tell you. But thank you for the respect and asking for, hey, you've been doing this for over 30 years. What are your suggestions?
Well,
but they're just suggestions. That's where I'm coming.
But that's the thing, is that you've got, Dragon's Foot, I guess, which is one of the biggest forums out there. There's other forums, but there's people who are playing first edition, and we don't have Dragon magazine to which
We don't have a
wasn't
Wizards of the Coast to say this is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, not that you have to have a final word, but if there's 50 different opposing viewpoints, somebody has to at least give you a direction. So it's good to have somebody who's done.
If there's an argument on those forums, I notice if you say something, they're like, boom, done. It just whoop,
Yeah,
there's the
that
official
happens.
word.
And I'm fighting against that, actually. Every game master has the right to his opinions. I also strongly counsel talk to your players, form a group consensus, what style of game you want. Do you want more? Hey, we all like to go out and kill things, but that's not all there is to the game. And any role-playing game offers the potential for the usual things, problem solving, high-minded, negotiation and stuff. Now, that's more entertainment and adult satisfaction, not adult triple X internet porn, but adult in the look at the attitude towards the gaming, cooperation, and so forth. And you can shift into that and appreciate those elements. So play the game the way you want. Talk to your players, get a consensus, say, okay, tonight we're just going to whop things. But then next week we're going to get into with real serious, non-combat type adventure stuff, head games.
Which is what the game that we just did. We just did a top secret game that Chad ran, and we only rolled the dice twice.
Yeah, and these could be dynamite
players
games.
were that good.
We got to satisfy that part of it that says, patience my ass, I want to kill something. The old Vulture cartoon.
Sometimes a good dungeon crawl is what you need.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The reason we talked about this is because you brought up the idea of this company. So what's the plan?
I have some ideas for product lines that I don't see anybody doing. And as long as it's that blue sky, as long as it's that far out of the box compared to the current standard products found in the industry, I really can't blow the whistle on any of that. Part of it is from when I started the RPGA and wrote tournaments at that time, tying into what I said earlier, you got to finish it in a 4-hour slot.
Right.
Okay. For that, some conventions have actually increased their time slots to accommodate longer adventures. I say wrong answer. Shorten the time slots. Encourage design for one-offs. Hey, try this, try that. This means less extensive character pre-gens.
Right.
More outline style, but getting right into the fun. So it takes some good design. So I guess not everybody can do that. We'll see. That's the direction I want to go.
Still involved with the RPGA?
Not really, although I always try and catch whatever RPGA tournament I see when I go to different conventions. A case in point, they have official RPGA events at TotalCon in Massachusetts, and I think it's February each year, the largest game convention in the Northeast, and they're nice enough to have had me there the last 2 years, and I asked about this coming year, and they say, hey, you can come all you want, we're getting along great, and I enjoy. It's not a megacon like Gen Con, okay? It's 1,000 or less, so you get to know people instead of dealing with mass stuff. That's the way to go. Right, GaryCon is even smaller so far, but as I say, be careful there because it's growing like mad. The coolest thing about GaryCon to me, really, despite all the alumni, etc., is it's officially sponsored by the Gygax family. All the family members have come together on this to honor Gary and so forth, and thus all of Gary's friends are absolutely behind this. I mean, we're down with that.
Yeah. So talking about honoring Gary, there's plans for a Gary Gygax memorial.
Mm-hmm.
There was an auction to help with that yesterday.
Quite correct. Gail had a real rough time, obviously, when Gary lost. Just imagine the tremendous personality of the man if you ever got to know him, as I did. Most people sadly did not. But such a wonderful guy, a really good, I mentioned chaotic good to people, and heavy on the good side there for Gary. Okay, late in his life, he found his Lord and his religion more strongly, embraced it more actively, and did good works accordingly, set a great example. And there's just so much about them. I could go on for so long about Gary, but so many people are together with that and want to remember him in a really permanent manner. Some have snickered at a Gygax statue. I think that's a natural for someone who broke near such ground. Now, I have a 1-hour tour of the history of D&D and how we got here, and I'll condense it just down to a soundbite. In post-World War II, we started playing these board games, Avalon Hill stuff then. Some other companies rose up then, but a lot of people started playing military simulations, and that was the climate, playing these military battle simulations, when the Tolkien elements and other fantasy stuff started getting big in the 60s. And this led, in synergy, then to this first ideas, Gary and Dave, for the, well, you put fantasy and wargaming together, and voila, a new child is born. And in the course of my 1-hour lecture, I can show you how Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson would not have been funded had it not been for chainmail, which gave birth to D&D, which gave birth to TSR, which gave birth to the Imitators, and the explosion of the late 70s and 80s. And it all comes back to Gary Gygax saying, yeah, I'll try this. I'll sit in this chair, start with the typewriter. That's all they had back then, remember? And I will devote all of my life, at least for a while, and let's see if we can make this happen, because it has potential. I don't think even Gary saw the potential of what was going to be born out of his creation. But I maintain it comes back to him sitting at one particular point in time looking at a typewriter saying, okay, how do we explain this?
I think it's complete. I mean, the idea of having the Gary Gygax Memorial, from a gamer's perspective, it makes obvious sense. But, I mean, from an outside perspective, to somebody who's never gamed in their life, it still makes huge sense, because all the things he did actually have these cultural ripples that go across. People who have never picked up a book or a game of any type have had their lives influenced by exactly what you're talking about.
When I post on message boards, and thanks for mentioning Dragon's Foot, one of my favorites, I do a lot of Q&A there. I hang out over at the ACM or a KM, which is a .com, as opposed to dragonsfoot.org, and several other sites. I couldn't list them all right now. But when I go out, you can set a signature or SIG that automatically appears every time you post, for those who aren't big on the internet stuff. And my SIG is, quote, "My friend Gary changed the world. Remember him, honor him."
Yep. Agreed. 100% agreed there.
Well, my sig on the Dragon's Foot is Gary's quote about barracks room of lawyers.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So, yes, I'm absolutely behind this, the statue. It is not, as I understand it, the intent is that it's something symbolic of his creations as opposed to an egotistical thing of him personally.
Maybe we'll move into a quieter room to finish this.
Okay,
just because,
cool.
The population increased out here a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. I'll bring us in here.
When you were talking about the statue, you also wanted to mention the auction.
Yeah.
So if you want to work a segue to transition this, maybe you can do a voiceover later or something.
Yeah, I'll throw a sound effect in. I usually throw like a whip or a clashing sword or something.
So in conjunction with this popular sentiment about honoring Gary and his creations, here at Gen Con, we're fortunate enough to have basically the convention donated prime stage time at the auction room. Now, the Gen Con auction is an amazing thing. I've been involved with it for nearly 30 years. And not you, listener, you bring your stuff in, okay, game stuff that you want to find a new home for. You're not going to make a fortune with it, but at least you can recycle it. It's not going to get dumped.
Make sure the right person gets it.
Right. And you put it in the auction, we find a new home for it, and you get the money. And thanks to modern software, you get the money next day. So you can go hit the dealer room, buy the latest cool stuff, and it's just gamer recycling the sane way. It's taken years to build this up. But we got to pay for the room, we got to pay for all the supplies, we have volunteers to feed, house, the whole thing. And for the auction management, of which I am not these days, it's a separate company that was formed to do that. They do a dozen auctions or more, game auctions. But they have to give up income, revenue, by knocking out a couple hours for a charity thing. And they do it wholeheartedly and with applause. It costs them real money is what I'm saying, not just, gee, what a nice gesture. Mm-hmm. So we were lucky enough last night to have approximately 75 items brought in by Gary's widow, Gail. As I mentioned, I know the whole family. Gail and I have gotten along great many times. She served tea with me and Gary on the porch and all. And I know she went through a very, very rough time after she lost Gary. And so it's taken a while, but enough time has come by. She's apparently coming out of the woods and the darkness and embracing life again. And it's great to see that. It's something we all have to go through eventually, losing spouses, parents, or what. But she is ready to release some of the things that Gary owned. And one of them was, for example, a very personal briefcase that he used many times, along with business card, a trade show badge, uniquely Gary Gygax, and stuff that just, they're one of a kind.
That'll sit in a nice frame.
And it was pleasing. I don't have exact numbers, but in those 75 or so items, I believe close to $10,000 was raised from folks like you just bidding and doing things like, yes, since it's for this cause, I will bid $50 for an $8 module.
I bought a Legendary Adventures book at the thing last night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, I got the one thing that you saw. It was the last thing that you had auctioned off before the thing started. But then I got one, for the actual charity, which I was excited to get. And I'm not going to keep the book hidden away. The provenance goes up, and the book will be taken care of, but it'll be played.
Absolutely. And everything came with certificates of authenticity, or COAs as we call them, signed by Gail personally. The whole thing is just dynamite. The final item was a briefcase that belonged to Gary, as I said, and I was heartened to see that went over $1,000. Now, some people might be surprised to hear that was the top item at just over $1,000. Yeah, the grand's a lot of money, but most of the items went for very reasonable prices. So many people got to have a little piece of Gary in the course of this. Granted, no rare manuscripts, handwritten or hand-typed things of Gary came up. It was all kind of lighter gauge, but those were deliberately selected to keep them lighter gauge, okay, and make them more affordable, because Gail's intention was strongly to let as many fans get a little piece of Gary in the course of this as possible. The money was almost secondary compared to that objective. And I got to give her full applause and top marks for the whole thing. It was great.
I really saw the emotion in Tim Cass when he started that whole.
Yeah.
I almost made me want to tear. Just hear the emotion coming. It's always like sit next to your friend, but it's not nice to auction off his stuff. And I almost lost it when he said that. I was standing next to him.
It was a really emotional moment at the beginning. It was really moving. Mm-hmm. It really was. But I think that guy who started the bidding by starting everything at 50, who was buying it at that, really kicked it off well. Got the tone of the night well. So. But since we're talking about the auction, it's a good time to bring up the idea of, the books, because, of course, this is a first edition podcast, and the people who are listening are playing first edition.
Cool.
Most of us are, what does Nick call them, grognards? That's not a word that I ever used before, but I'll use it.
I think that was a Gary word, actually.
Is it? I didn't know.
We're not sure of the roots, and some say grognards, reflecting the French origins.
Since, a lot of us, we actually just have our books from back then, but on our show, we have really young listeners. We have one kid who's 14 years old who has been sending in stuff he's designed, but not everybody can get the books all the time, so it's a good idea to have someplace like that to go. Have you looked at any of the clones?
Oh, of course. Since this is a first edition cast, you don't need to go through and say, yeah, you want to play first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game by Gary Gygax, you buy this product or get the free download of a product called Osric and so forth. But there should be a guide put together somewhere, and now that things have codified, things have shaken out some, you can go, and if you like 1E, shorthand for the big long title I just said, or 2E, or Holmes, the Dr. John Eric Holmes, the late Dr. John Holmes, sadly from this year. I'm really getting depressed about announcing the latest deaths on the auction stage, but we're just aware of we're all getting older and older. You folks listening, luckily, are going to last a lot longer than I am. So you have your choice of going out, digging around, doing eBay, Amazon, finding the original first edition books, or just doing the free download of Osric. Yeah. Imagine taking your Advanced D&D first edition hardback DM guide, rip the cover off, put a plain brown wrapper on it, and just crayon on the front Osric. And that's essentially what happened. Okay, now for legal reasons you got to rewrite the text, so you say it different, but the rules are the same. Yeah. So you can get free or real low cost on Lulu or what have you, versions of Holmes D&D, Moldvay Cook D&D, my version, Mentzer D&D, the Gary's AD&D, even OD&D is available in that form. And of course, these are what we call the retro clones, whose objective in design is just duplicate the originals. And then we have retro style, things like the Great Castle and Crusades, which was an old school style in game, but not clone by any means, coming up with cool new ways to do things, kind of combining the old and the new. Bottom line, this creates this wonderful old school climate. Now, there's some people that say 4th edition is faltering, and who knows? I know that most of the buyers of 4th edition are not the sort of folks who come to a game convention like this. So I don't think any temporary slumps in product values for 4th edition that we're seeing here at the auction are at all reflective of market conditions, because this isn't their primary market. And of course, if Wizards just didn't come at all, everybody be, saying doom and gloom and they must be in trouble. No, not the case. That's just, this isn't the primary target, but they come here anyhow to support the industry, to support their image and so forth. So it all works out.
Yeah, and our position on the show is our position as people is that we don't care about edition wars or any of that. We play the one we play. We are really happy that people game, period. Mm-hmm. That's end of story. It doesn't really matter which one, but we happen to play this one. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the old school or the 1st edition type of things, it's great if somebody who's just getting into the game can pick up an Osric book and come and join a couple of old farts like us who happen to have the other ones, and we all play together. We have the same rules, and it's fine.
Or grab, if you don't want AD&D, if you'd like to stick to the classic, then pick up Labyrinth Lord or something like that. Yeah. To replicate that. And there's all the rules, just like they were. It's just in a new different wrapper. And it's a wonderful climate like that. I still suspect that somebody inside Wizards of the Coast may have thought this through and said, let's empower our customers by giving them the explicit legal right to write for these games we no longer produce and support. And this created this just incredibly fertile and vast field for us all to get out there and grow our own adventures and products. You, listener, can literally put together your own AD&D adventure and offer it for sale at almost no cost.
I usually compare it to the whole thing between open source software and commercial software, and I've done this in my business world job that I have, where I've given presentations, and I'll put up two faces next to each other. I'll put Linus Torvalds and Gary Gygax, and I'll use those to explain to people the idea of, they call it the cathedral and the bazaar. You've got the cathedral that controls everything, and then the bazaar, which is just a whole bunch of anarchy, everybody doing their own. And so I always put up Gary and Linus for that.
Nice.
So, but one of the things about first edition also is the pick up and play kind of aspect of it. Especially if you're a 3-book or with OD&D or any of this. So I wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about advice for bringing people in who maybe have never played the thing before. If questions like, do you set people down and give them minis or not? Do you start new players at first level when they've never played the game before? How do you get them in easily?
The reason I prefer to run and play old school, if you will, personally, it's usually either first edition AD&D or the set I wrote, BECMI. It's sometimes called, standing for Basic Expert Companion Masters and Mortals. I prefer to go that way and keep it real loose. If you were a war gamer in 1973, original D&D, OD&D, made all the sense in the world. You read it as a miniatures rules set with this new idea of playing a role, but they didn't actually play the roles that well or that much back then. They were thinking in terms of war games. We're in a different mindset these days. I mean, we kind of know what role-playing is. I'm going to skip the basics of, oh, yes, you assume the persona of a character in whatever genre. Okay, we'll skip those basics. To get started playing old school, the best advice I can give you is by pointing at what I don't like about the current version and a couple others. For example, to pick on a neutral turf here, Paizo Publishing's Pathfinder is a 3.5 and modified from there. Let's go our own direction using a 3.5 core base. Right. Okay. A lot of your listeners are going, ooh, 3.5, the edition that can't be named or whatever. But hey, chill. Game. Everybody for their own style of game. Yeah. But In 3.5 and in 4.0, the objective was this is a game with a rule for everything. There are rules about everything, and I flipped that. Everything's about rules. Okay? And thus, where did fun go in there? You try and find the fun while obeying all these rules. Old school style is chill with the rules. Dude, okay? If you don't know the rule, move on. Okay, arbitrarily decide how we're going to resolve this problem within the next 3 seconds. You roll the die, you make a decision, and you rock. Okay, and you don't worry about the rules. You don't really worry a lot about consistency. Even we did it different yesterday. Well, chill, dude. Again, this works whichever way you do it. So let's just resolve that ambiguity by using a randomizer. In other words, roll the die. And move on and focus on the story, the portraying of the roles, the fun, the problem solving, the hacking, chopping, looting, whatever the fun parts are to you, but don't get hung up on the rules. And that's the most important. Go ahead and do try and learn whatever rule set you have adopted as the mutually agreed upon methodology for resolving your differences or for determining variables, to lapse into my game designer speak, because that's what I do as a writer. But don't get hung up on that. That's not priority one. Priority one is fun.
All right. If everybody agrees on the same random system and they all think it's logical and it is random and they're consistent with the approach, where's the problem?
If you grew up with coin flipping, that's the methodology you'd use in determination in your game. If you grew up with an ascending armor class system, as the later editions of D&D, then that's what you'd feel good about. Or a descending armor class system for us old guys, then that's what you got. But whatever works for you, man.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the chits in the bag and before the dice sort of approach.
That's right. Didn't they come out with the Holmes edition, the chits? That's when first came out because they ran out of dice set.
No, I thought the chits. Maybe you can straighten it out. I thought chits were before dice, just because nobody had found polyhedral dice yet.
Well, I've been doing the auction for so many years. We see a lot of these. I was also at TSR from 1980 to 86. And the PR story was, we experimented with using chits because, for one thing, in prisons and other restricted environments, they were down on dice. You can use them to play gambling games involving money. Also, in others, shall we say, more sensitive religious situations, there are problems with dice as opposed to this. The true story was that management at one point said, boy, we're spending a lot on dice. Let's see if we can cheapen it out, and we'll put in some laminated plastic laminated cardboard, and we can save a good 3, maybe 4 cents a box set by doing that. And so they tried it, and it bombed, and so they dumped it, and they went back to the dice right away. We all like our dice. It's a sub-feature of the hobby, and that was the wrong thing to do, so they got off that right away.
We should do an entire show just on dice.
Yeah, we did actually.
Because they're just so much fun.
History on the chit stuff.
So neat.
But the other one is about minis then, because it's the same sort of thing. Different people have started out playing differently with or without minis. And so I'm always kind of wondering when I'm bringing people in that haven't played before, should I have minis or not? Because I don't know.
We are, again, in almost a golden age for miniatures, because you can, for cheap, very little money, pick up a fully painted, immediately usable miniature. Now, okay, fine, I'm an old fart, but way back when, in the 70s, you could get some minimally detailed figures if you're willing to get out the X-Acto knife, cut off all the flange, get to work with paints and primers and so forth, and mount them on bases. They were on dinky little bases, but they'd fall over in a heartbeat. Before then, shortly before I got into it, you had to find the kits, buy ingots of lead-based metal. And if you were really into it, your own furnace, and you'd melt your metal into the. I mean, it's like a miniature steel mill. The big ladles, pouring it into the.
Well, if you're playing a dwarf, then you feel more appropriate with the ladle.
Right. So we're in a great period, and I give all the credit for this to Wiseman at WizKids, who was the first to say, "Let's do this whole game, this Clicks game." Okay, Mage Knight. Okay, was the first one. And we'll have them all painted in the Orient and ship. And then everybody was on the bandwagon. Everybody was down with that in seconds, because it was a big quantum leap in miniatures gaming. On the other hand, a couple of times it has driven me nuts when I have tried to introduce old school gaming to some new school players, and they put their figures out, and I say, okay, and you arrive in town and head down the main street. And they do it 5 feet at a time down
like
Main
a board
Street.
game.
Okay, right. They just need to be awakened, though, because once I get them out of that mold and into free form, it's, oh, and we don't have to, and we're not stuck with, and we're not limited in, and, you know, it's just whatever I want rather than all these rules. So that's the miniatures all the time make a great visual aid. Oh, look, we'll put this one up on 3 sets of 6-siders to indicate he's up on the wall, and it gives you even 3-dimensional aspects for line of sight calcs, all sorts of things for gaming. So they can be very cool, but it's not what the game's about. It's the fun. Use these as aids to have more fun, and don't get hung up on where they are and which direction they're pointed.
Yeah, I mean, I like being able to do what you just said, you know, quickly resolve whether something's in line of sight, but it always kind of makes me feel bad when I have people around a table and I notice that everybody's looking intently at the miniatures instead of each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, that's maybe my thing about it.
Along those same lines, I tend to not use a Game Master screen. The games that I run, part of it is I have dozens, hundreds of mini encounters, full adventures and things floating around in my head at any given time. And I can literally take a piece of each of 8 different ones and just shake them up, dump them in front of a bunch of players piece by piece, and it's a whole new thing. So I don't need a lot of notes. I am not worried about a lot of rules because I'm just quite as likely to make something up for a fast resolution as following a book rule. And I make a lot of eye contact, draw out those who are a little shy, suppress tactfully those who are trying to monopolize my time or the game, and sometimes surprise people with some of the twists and turns. But I'm part of the action. You know, I'm in there gaming with the rest of them without this wall between me and them. Now, this isn't for everybody, and you kind of have to have your act together and be calm and cool about it, even if you're not really. Look calm and cool while you're handling like this. So it's a little different, but try it sometime. You might get used to it and really like it.
I've had plenty of times when I was doing a game and convinced that everybody could see that I was fudging things and making up different rules on the spot, and afterwards they had no, you know, they were, hey, that went great. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I fooled you.
You will do better than you think you'll do. We're always paranoid as game masters. Is this going to be good enough? Or, I mean, they're my friends. There's a peer pressure thing. They're here. They've devoted this chunk of time this afternoon, this evening, whatever, to having fun. Am I good enough to make sure they are having fun? So there's, you know, even if it's the same people you've been gaming with for a long time, there's a certain amount of pressure.
You know, just since we're mentioning that. But to wrap up this topic, there's a couple of books that Gary wrote specifically on, you know, being a good DM and being a good player that I think are still great to go back and read. And the titles are escaping me, and I want to say them on the show. Can anybody remember the title?
One is Role Playing Mastery.
Yeah, I just saw that online the other day. Yes.
Yeah, I still have. He gave me a case of those somewhere along the line, so I keep some of those handy. I give some out just as gifts to folks, and every now and then I sell a couple at cost. I'm not looking to get rich on eBay and offer free autographs. I mean, we're not sports stars. Autographs are free in the game industry. Last I looked.
Yeah, but anybody who's looking for them, you know, Amazon will have some used booksellers that might have a copy and stuff. If there's time, I wanted to go into one last thing about TSR itself, but I want to be respectful of your time. Yeah, it's a little warm in here.
Yeah, we're cooking.
It's at the 30-minute mark. That's why I was.
Yeah.
Okay. 2:35. I'm good.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
All right, so let's get into Jeff Grubb was on our show. Margaret Weiss was on our show. They had some great stories about working at the TSR offices. So why don't you tell us how you got involved with getting into the TSR office? How you got hired by Gary directly?
No, actually. Let's see. To shrink this one down, I started work at TSR in January 20th, 1980. I started on the same day as another guy I'm sure you've heard of, Tom Moldvay.
Yes.
He came in from Ohio. I came in from the Philly area, respectively, where we each live. And they hired me as an editor because Tom got the design job. And boy, did they have a design job for him. Of course, they put him to work on that version of BASIC with the Aero Lotus cover, you know, right out of the box. As well as, well, you want to do modules or something on the side, you know, but the BASIC was practically his first thing. We worked in the same office for a bit, and then he moved. It shook out from there. But I was an unemployed, gosh, what am I going to do with my life type, floating around Philly. My unemployment had run out.
Were you doing music back then?
I did some music, but mostly I was hanging out and gaming. And you work a little, then you tap the government and sponge off the public well for a while, which I don't think much of nowadays. Back then it was how you eat. And when it comes down to whether you eat or not, well, you can do a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise do. I was running a campaign in the Philly area, and I realize now in retrospect it was a little much because I had this small apartment and I was having 10, 12, 15 people over 5 times a week to play D&D. Now this was in the 70s when it's booming, okay? I mean, guys with day jobs, and then they're up all evening playing D&D at my place, and then we'd get together on Saturdays and go all day to top that as well as weekdays. So I'm hanging out playing games, wondering what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to be 30 in a year, and one of my players insists, absolutely stands on my face, that you are going to apply for one of these 2 jobs that got advertised in Dragon. So that's how I got shoved into it. I sent in the app, TSR called, and said, hey, can you come out for an interview? And I said, not a chance. I don't have penny one. And so they agreed, actually, to interview me by phone. And the people who did it were Lawrence Schick and Harold Johnson. Now, Law was the author of White Plume Mountain, Harold of Lost Shrine of Tomoakan, and so forth. So these are like legendary figures I'm talking to. And one thing led to another. They talked about it, decided I was sort of their kind of weird, and made me an offer. So I came on out then at that point. In the early days at TSR, at least in the 80s, I shouldn't say early days, because talk to Tim Kask or somebody, like he started Dragon Magazine in 76, so he predates me by quite a bit there. I consider myself like second wave, or even third, arriving in 1980.
Do you have any? I just wanted. Do you have any idea when the ad was in Dragon for the job, the help wanted?
September or October, something like that, of 79.
Of 79. Okay, I'm going to look for it.
Right.
While we're talking.
Right,
cool.
So you're at the TSR now. You got hired to TSR. Did they approach you and say we want you to redo the Molde rules, or? Well,
no. First thing was to do editing, because that's what they hired me for. Okay. And that was really a very good move, because that way I learned how things were done at TSR without getting stuck with a lot of commitment, a lot of stuff that I didn't really know what to do about. So I learned the people, I learned the methodologies. I almost screwed up the dungeon board game in that when we went to the long box version from the small, because I checked over everything, and everything was perfect. But then Harold Johnson, who was my supervisor, caught the error. On one side of the card sheet for the dungeon game, the cards were kind of left to right, and on the front they were running up down. Oh. And that wasn't something I even thought of checking as an editor. That was like a layout thing, and I had no idea. So they talked about it. No, it wasn't Frank's fault. It'll cost us some money. We caught it in time, but no, it wasn't Frank's fault, so we don't toss him out right away. The real toss him out moment came around that time when Gary was writing and finished writing Keep on the Borderlands to replace Mike Carr's In Search of the Unknown module that was to go in the basic set. And the manuscript came over, and the word was, okay, spelling only. No changes of archaic terms, especially. No rephrasing from High Gygaxian, etc. And so, and they hand it to me, the new editor. And so it's a rudimentary, routine job. I go through, I'm checking it all, and looking it over, and it occurs to me as a long time, at that point, I'd been running my campaign for 4 years back in Philadelphia. And I look at this keep, and I look at the characters, I look at the keep, I look at the listings, and there's a cleric, but there's no church for the cleric. So I said, hey, Harold, there's no church for this cleric. He says, shut up and do the editing. And I said, somebody ought to point this out. This isn't a glitch. This is a design glitch. And they said, it's not a glitch. Whatever Gary writes, it's not a glitch, okay? And I really made a kind of a fit about it. It was my first out on a limb moment. And they said, essentially, if you don't like it here, fine. Write something up. Tell Gary he's wrong. And we'll throw you a farewell party, even though you've only been here for 4 months. And so I sent it over. I wrote up. It is a good example for anybody listening. Don't just diss something. Don't just pick at it. Offer a positive solution for the problem. Okay? So I wrote up a suggested chapel for the cleric. And they were in the midst of planning out my farewell thing. And later that week, back comes interoffice memo from the office of the president, and he says, Gary, scribbled note, yep, I was in a hurry, I forgot, use it. And everybody loses it. This new guy comes out of nowhere, and Gary admits a mistake. Now, okay. From there, I got to know Gary better. I got formally introduced to him as a new employee. All new employees had a meeting with the boss because it's a legendary figure. It's a perk, really.
Yeah.
Actually, he's checking you out to see if he wants to keep you and so forth. And so we kind of started getting to know each other right away in 1980. I won some competition in that year, and they said, hey, why don't you start this club? And Mike Carr, the general manager, had come up with the idea of the RPGA and had even named it that at that point. That's in memoranda, internal, in the 78, 79. And so I just took their idea and ran it fully. Again, being a little brassy in my approach, I said this should be for all role-playing games, not just TSRs. And Gary agreed, but the rest of management said, not a chance are we promoting other people's games. And I was not marketing savvy enough to put it in corp speak and say, would you like to make money off of games you don't own? In which case they would have been all over it. But for a while it was TSR games only. Later the RPGA broadened to be very inclusive and really industry-wide. I did that for 2-3 years, and in the course of which got to know Gary pretty well, and we were hitting it off pretty good as friends, in addition to him up the ladder at the top of the company and me down there in production. And then at one point he made his decision and tapped me to be the one person to write the entire D&D game. And I think the thing I am proudest of that period is I'm the last one-man designer of the entire game. Team approach from that point on, from my last set onwards.
And I think, you know what, though? I think that's one of the other things that a lot of people kind of subconsciously catch on the older games versus, nothing against anything newer. But it's the same way whether you're looking in film or games or any of these kind of things. When you have a creative approach that has an auteur at it, it's going to either crash and burn or be really, really great.
And, of course, to avoid crash and burn, this being the TSR flagship that was going to be printed in the millions, literally translated into a dozen languages and go all over the world, Gary was all over me like hair on a gorilla. Every word, every paragraph was scrutinized. I mean, everything for that. I was still a relatively untried commodity. I had done okay with the RPGA, but never a mega project like this. Experts said they were still on me carefully, but they were so happy with the way BASIC turned out that things loosened up, and by companion, I was able to draw on other TSR resources to make things happen. So I got to mention Gary Spiegel and Doug Niles, and I said, okay, my wargaming days are a ways back, and you guys know what people are playing these days. Help me design this war machine system so that it'll handle 50 critters, it'll handle 50,000 critters. I laid out the parameters for a design project, just essentially turned them loose, came back, we went back and forth, play tested. But that the companion set, the third of the three, is probably the highlight of my whole D&D box set career, because for the first time I was presenting campaign rules, guidelines, including mass combat, including whole dominions that your character is ruling, and building them so that they run semi-realistically, can get put on automatic with a little number crunching, and then it's just work up rationales why this baron and that baron are going out adventuring together, in terms of power, national need, whatever. You're into a different level of play at that point. So Companion, I think, was my highlight.
Now, the Immortal set.
Mm-hmm.
What's the history behind that? Because no one has actually ever really duplicated that in the D&D history. I think Wizards, maybe in 3rd edition or 3.5, did try to do something similar. They still didn't capture your Immortal. What was the whole reasoning behind just another level of the game? You and Gary sat down and said, let's bring it to another height. 'Cause I really like the Immortals game.
Thank you. I bounced several parts of Immortals off of Gary. Gary was really into the weapon mastery system I did in the Master set, the black one, before that. But by the time I was leaning into Immortals, I merely had contact with Gary because he had been forced out in a stock juggle, or that was in progress at that point. So I really wrote that on my own. Now, some people joke about Immortals as being nearly unplayable. For example, here's a complete list of every possible spell, and it's just like a spell point system. You invest a little immortal power and produce the magical effect. Yeah. You're immune, as an immortal, to all mortal magics. Mm-hmm. So you're like a whole different level of existence. But the reason for that really was as a capstone product, not so much intended as play at this level, although some gamers going to want to, so I made it playable. Yeah. If you have the adult approach, not adult as in X-rated internet porn, but adult as in the more mature level of play of problem-solving, goal things, so forth, rather than just going out and boffing something. We used to call it Boffinork syndrome in early AD&D. The famous rule about you got a jillion experience points, but you can only go up one level. So you get overstocked, and the idea is to go out, kill an orc, and then come back and convince your DM that was an adventure so you can qualify to train again. And then this became codified as one word, B-O-F-A-N-O-R-C, Boffinork syndrome, to qualify as an adventure. You can do that at the immortal level, but it offers a whole lot more on a more mature level of entertainment. But the main purpose of the set was really to provide a capstone and to say this is how reality works within this fantasy system we have, and here's your background rationale for this, for that, for the gods, or immortals in this case. All these things, all these threads that were left hanging. It's like the final movie in a series and resolves all the plot points and so forth, and it's all a done deal. So it was sort of an odd product in presenting the underground structure that supports all the previous sets while offering a playable set, but that's not its primary purpose.
That's a little bit like Manual of the Plains, like Jeff Grubb's work then. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like a lot of Jeff's work.
Oh, he's a great writer. He's really good. Actually, the one other thing I wanted to ask, as long as we're on that, since we're kind of talking about the magic systems and all that, and of course it's always called a Vancian magic system, although I guess really it was only in the one set of books that came out like that. Mm-hmm. But how much, two things. One, how much was it really consciously applied, whenever doing any game mechanics, like this is the way magic has to work? And two, have you seen that Jack Vance just wrote a new book?
No, I didn't.
It came out August 1st. I know, I'm really excited.
Excellent.
What's the title?
It's Kugel's...
it's Kugel again.
Oh, it's Kugel.
Excellent.
He's my favorite.
Yes. everybody's favorite for any Vancian.
And Jack Vance wrote a new book.
Yeah. Well, that, as you point out, it was just in that one series that Vancian Fire and Forget type spell system was really the soup du jour. He went different directions in different series. For some reason, that grabbed a hold of Gary, I think, as a designer. Remember, Gary's a war game designer.
Yeah.
Look at Alexander from Gaiden Games, an Ancients war game. Okay, well known for his contribution in various war game magazines and things. So he thinks in terms of mechanics in resolving battles like that. And by using a Vancian Fire and Forget magic system, if I can use that term, Fire and Forget, I think it's reasonably appropriate. What he had was a real simple method for irrefutable answers of why you can and can't control this as a game mechanic and a structure, a magic system. It appealed to him at the time as a wargamer, I think. Now, there's a lot of trouble with it in the big picture rationale of why do you forget it and things like that. These arguments have been hashed out, and I'm not going to go there.
For Gary Con, too, we mentioned this, and I know he knows I'm a big fan, but, another writer did kind of the same thing. Zelazny kind of also does the Fire and Forget.
To an extent, but not nearly as widespread. Zelazny's one of my all-time favorites.
Although when I think about how to play a magic user, I usually have, John Bellairs, he wrote Face in the Frost. Have you ever, that book?
It's not Bellairs, though. I don't think.
Oh, well, whoever
I'm probably wrong. We're getting off.
But either way, the way that those two wizards act in there are usually the ones I think of. But at any rate.
Here we go. That wasn't Howard?
I'm probably am wrong, but I just did find it's The Laughing Magician: The Adventures of Kugel,
Oh,
which
sweet.
was released on August 1st, 2010.
Sweet. All right. Have to check that out. Among my prime directives, if you will, for writing the D&D box set line was, number one, make sure it is completely different from a D&D, because at this point there were legal elements in reaffirming brand identity. It had to do with the ultimate settlement of the Arneson suit and so forth. But within those parameters, my number two objective was to go back to the roots, look at OD&D, consider Holmes and Moldvay Cook, but go back to OD&D and work from there, and then we work through certain rough spots. You, I'm sure, have noticed in Immortals, I still insist on calling them demons. And whereas this was whitewashed out of 2E, right? And they came up with names. They were
Demons and other weird names in 2A.
so I had certain freedoms that they didn't in the AD&D side, but I did have certain strictures and so forth. The magic system is Vancian in both, because that's the way the creators did it in both. Both Gary's AD&D and the original Gygax and Arneson OD&D. So that's just what we were handed. That was one of the axioms. And we didn't really worry about rationalization.
Well, I think we've already monopolized a ton of your time, so thank you
No
for going
problem.
along with us.
Sure. But yes, you're right. Gen Con is pretty wild and woolly, so I do need to be rolling along.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So,
Thanks for stopping by, Frank.
Yep.
Frank, thank you so much.
Hope that worked.
Wonderful.
All right, so we're back, and that was I had so much fun with the interview. And, I know you did too, Jason. We were running in and out of that room trying to stop people from talking and everything. And
I know it's funny because you heard that at the beginning there, how you could hear the people in the convention, because we wanted to do the interview where you could tell we're at the convention, but then it turns out that I picked the one time that normally somewhat noisy, somewhat quiet area was about to be the staging area for the anime parade.
Oh my God.
The cosplay parade. So all of a sudden there's just these people everywhere, and we ducked into the business center, so that's where you heard it get quiet. But then, of course, every now and then somebody would want to come into the business center. But we did our best, and Frank was a good sport about it.
So people like Sailor Moon dressed up and Pokemon
All of
and
that.
what have you?
Yeah,
Oh
all of that. I mean,
I didn't see a Pokemon.
That's frightening.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. It's Gen Con's like two different conventions at once. You got the anime convention and you've got the gaming convention, and they just kind of smash together.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun. I don't know anything about what they're dressed up as. Although I spotted somebody dressed up as my favorite independent webcomic. I saw somebody there as Dr. Ninja, which is awesome. Nothing to do with anime. Oh, Dr. Ninja is great.
Well,
and I did.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I did also meet one of my favorite gaming cartoonists, and I think we talked about him ages ago for Full Frontal Nerdity, Aaron Williams, who does Nodwick Chronicles.
Yeah.
Such a great guy. Really just fun, great guy.
Like I pointed out to Jason, I said, Gen Con's also an excuse for everybody to wear the most ridiculous hat they can possibly find.
Yes.
And that's it. Just a hat and their normal clothes. I'm like, what's the point?
Just because it's awesome. I mean, it's the one time that everybody wears their crazy hats. I would like to know if all those utilikilts that we saw actually get worn when people are not at the conventions.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I will never wear one, but I have so much. I really admire what they're trying to do.
Yeah, there's some people wearing those kilts that shouldn't have been wearing those kilts. That's all I'm going to say.
Bless them for trying. They're actually, I'll bet you anything. We've got some listeners who have utilikilts, and I'm going to this is an open letter to all people who wear utilikilts. Wear it loud and wear it proud. I won't be wearing one with you, but wear it loud and wear it proud. I think they're actually kind of cool. If there was some way for that to be broadly socially acceptable, I'd be a little more. No.
Well, there was one last question I had for you before we take off for this week, but what were the meanings behind all the names of the characters in your game? You never explained that to all of us.
Okay, yeah. So I ran the game, and I don't have all the characters in front of me. Let's see if I can remember them off the top of my head. There was you had Roy Metalbringer.
Yes.
And it was just the first name, Roy. Roy is the fighter in the Order of the Stick comic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you
Yes.
should know. I'm like, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
I'm
that's
playing.
right. Forgot
Yeah,
about that
and
guy.
there was. Let me see here.
The guy from The Land Before Time.
Gosh, I wish I could find him. Actually, you know what? I don't have the names in front of me because I let everybody keep their sheets. But I know that I had one of the guys was based on a character from Father Ted.
What about
that
Brick?
was? I forget his name now.
Brick was one of them.
Brick. I mean, Brick actually was from a Terry Pratchett book.
Oh,
And
okay.
Brick was actually
Okay.
from a troll. Let me see here if I can remember the Father Ted one. Who else did we have? We had a druid.
Yeah, the druid. And it was.
Do you remember any names?
Tea Leaf something?
Oh, Tea Leaf. Okay, so Tea Leaf is the Cockney rhyming slang for a thief. So if you're Tea Leaf, then you're a thief. And Dougal McMacmac.
Yes.
McMacmac.
Dougal McMacmac. That's cool.
That was the cleric because Father Dougal on Father Ted is the drunk, fack all the time. That's his such. God, I don't remember what else. What else we had a ranger. Do you remember his name?
No, it was some weird name though.
Well, I guarantee everything was a reference to either a British comedy or some kind of just like Cockney rhyming slang or something like that. So
the Witch's Head was a good module. We had fun. The group focused too much on that one room.
Yeah, well, that's a lesson to me. That's the first time that I've run an adventure at a con, and when you've got to get everything done in 4 hours and people have places to be, you've got to think about how to move it along. I mean, and that's what what Frank was just saying there in the interview. The whole question of how do you run things to keep them the right length for cons. So it's something I'll learn. And I'll be learning that as I continue to play things at cons. I'm going to be at GaryCon next year. I will be running on behalf of Dead Game Society.
Cool.
Of which I am now
Cool,
I am now a full member of Dead Game Society. My picture up on the website and everything. Got my shirts. And actually, Vince, I didn't see you at the podcasters meet and greet.
Yeah, I had been. I was stuck in. Sorry, I was stuck in a Catan game actually.
Oh well, that's all right.
I was stuck in a time warp. Couldn't get there.
No, I went to the ballroom.
It was really good. The guys from Fear the Boot were there, and
cool.
From the Wandering Geek podcast. I got some great photos. We all hung out. They were wonderful to meet. We had a blast.
Neato.
Yeah, I got stuck in. I went to the ballroom. They said, remember at 500 there was all those games. So I cashed in some of my generic tickets and I played like 3 or 4 games. I had so much fun playing that game. It was like it's
awesome.
addicting.
Yeah, I'm my horizons are broadened every time I go to Gen Con. So upcoming, we're going to have some great shows coming up over the next few weeks because we're going to have some great guests. We talked about Julie already, who did one of the Grimtooth's traps.
Yep.
Also coming up in a future episode, we have I had a nice sit down with Jim and Debbie from Gamers Rule. They're the guys that make those dungeon decks. Do you like, Nick?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. I met him. Yeah.
Yeah, and also they put out the collector's guides to D&D, collector's guides to AD&D, and we talked about all of that, which was a lot of fun. We will have the Dead Gamers Society on as special guests in the upcoming weeks, maybe a couple weeks from now, and more surprises to come.
Sounds like a fun time all around.
It's gonna be awesome.
Thanks to everybody that we met there. It was a blast meeting all the people at the Roll for Initiative meetup. Hopefully we'll be staying in touch with them. Thanks to the Dead Gamer Society for running some of the best games there, and for helping us promote our podcast. A lot of people got flyers from them, I saw. And just everybody we met, and it was just such a blast. I can't wait to see everybody at the next convention.
Definitely got to go again next year now.
Yeah.
Maybe all 3 of us can go and we can...
Yeah, and it was good to get to, for us to hang out, Nick, in person, even if it wasn't at the convention.
Yeah, it was. I got to meet each one of you, ships passing in the night, one going one way, one going the other. But
Literally.
But it was really cool. We, in a way, we just, almost had a conference kind of thing going there.
Yes, we had our virtual conference.
Yes, it was a virtual conference, but it was really good. Just put a face to the name and just chit chat about things. And
yeah, all I see of Nick every week is that same graphic picture on the Skype of him with his nose and the hat.
Isn't that weird? How Nick actually looks exactly like Phineas? I thought that
no, he doesn't look.
Isn't that weird? Yeah, well,
I know. I thought that was a drawing of Phineas' fingers, but that's a photo.
That's actually
Phineas is my uncle. So.
Oh, okay, that's why this is there. Okay.
All right, so let's. I think we've taken enough time from you people, fine people out there. Let's head out for the Roll for Initiative podcast, the road home from Gen Con, we'll call this, I guess. I don't know.
Nice.
This is Vince signing off for Jason and Nick. Keep it original, keep it old school, and keep the revolution going for old school gaming.
See y'all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Roll for Initiative. www.d20radio.com.